All right, we're live. What's up, everyone? Roy here, and you're listening to the Clemens with a Z podcast. And this episode is another bonus episode. I have brought back Tanya um, to share more about her story. There were some things that she was talking about in her initial interview that I just didn't want to gloss over, and I wanted to revisit because I thought it was powerful,
Mm.
and I think it was important to continue the conversation with a couple of those things, that being her talking about the colonization of faith, what it was like for these Americans to come in, and the sense of losing her culture um, to join this church, and then also just her experience as a woman in Boston and the church and being a person of color and those things that she saw. And I just didn't want to gloss over those things. So here we go. So yeah, Tanya, welcome back.
Oh, hi, Roy. I'm so happy to be here again.
Yeah.
Thank you. I said it last time, but I would like to say it again.
Mhm.
You holding space. I even dare to say holding sacred space for
Mm.
having a conversation, for listening
Mhm.
without an agenda, without, um, yeah, any hidden intentions, just holding sacred space for me. It is so important and it is so good for my heart, for my soul, for my mind. And I appreciate you for that because I know it's not easy.
Mhm.
And yet you've been doing it. And I get to listen to the previous episodes, previous stories, and it's just like, who they wouldn't know how impactful they were, their words were, these conversations. So I'm wondering, like, even though it's right now it's just you and I in this podcast, in this second episode,
Mhm.
I'm imagining all the people that might be here with us and benefit from something. And I'm glad for that.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for saying that again. I mean, I do have an agenda. The agenda is healing. The agenda is using my voice and hopefully helping other people to use their voice as well. Because the biggest thing that I think I walked away from when it comes to church is how small I was. And not
Mm,
small in a sense of the world, because we're all small, you know. But
yeah.
I don't think that I came out feeling that I was worth much or that I could have that my story was worth anything. And I think
Mm,
a lot of us, I don't know, I just want people to feel like they can share
mm,
their stories because we all went through something and we all came out of it with something, small or large. And it deserves to be shared, I guess,
for
you
sure.
know?
For
And
sure. Uh-huh.
I like that image you said of like, even though like right now it's just us talking, in like a few days it'll be us essentially talking to a bunch of people, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. And if any of your previous guests are around, thank you.
Mhm.
It was so worth it and it helped me so much.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, there's this book I'm reading, I think it's Bird by Bird, and it's a book about writing, but she was saying how like in order to get to truth, you have to talk and you have to dig
Hmm.
and you have to keep talking and keep digging.
Hmm.
And so like the moment we stop talking about it is that's when everything stops. The healing stops, our quest for truth, all of that. We kind of lose it. And
Hmm.
so I don't know, let's keep talking. If people keep listening and want to come on, I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
yeah. And you mentioned how talking about your life and sharing your life made you feel tired. Um, and it's interesting that you said that. I felt that too sometimes. It's like it's like a workout. It's almost like giving your soul and your heart a voice for as long as you did
Mm,
can take its toll. But it was a good tired from what I was getting.
definitely. Yeah.
Mhm.
Even just take the opportunity to say, yeah, I am actually tired and I'm gonna listen to my body. Because for so long, most of us were taught to ignore and go on because there was
Mm-hmm.
the biggest purpose. And not only that took a toll on all of us, but also it helped us to stop listening to our own selves and bodies and intuition
Mm-hmm.
because there was something more important and that was never reachable, and you didn't have a right to rest.
No, if you stopped, stopping was death. Stopping was the end. Like you're not furthering the kingdom,
That's
and
true.
and you couldn't listen to that. You would go, you would work sick, you would be at church sick, you would be here tired. I mean, I remember listening to all that you did, and I was tired. You know.
I know. And also thank you for the patience, Rose, because it's someone gave me this description and it made so much sense. It's been a couple of months after only 1 year being out of the ICOC. And
Hmm.
that's so little, like officially,
Yeah,
right? I've been
you're a
working.
baby.
I'm a baby. I'm just a baby. And even, I mean, I've been talking, I mentioned this to my husband and said to him, like, yeah, it's been years of trying, right?
Mhm.
So officially happened a little more than a year ago, and this person told me, uh, Tanya, it's like trying to drink. You're so thirsty, right? That you're gonna try to drink
Hmm.
some water to calm your thirstiness. I don't know if that's a word. And
It's fine. Yeah.
okay. And and instead of drinking one glass of water, you go directly to these, how do you call the ones where the fire
Oh, fire hose or fire hydrant. Yeah. Hmm.
so you put your
Hmm.
face directly to this fire hydrant.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's been 28 years.
Yeah.
I wish there would be a way to summarize 28 years in an hour or in two, and
Hmm.
then you remember more things, and then you consider, oh my goodness, this actually really happened. I forgot about that. And but anyways, that's why I say thank you for the patience.
No, it's all good. I love that you use the drinking from a fire hydrant because I use drinking from a fire hose all the time. Like that's one of my favorite metaphors for things. If I'm
Yeah.
going to Costco, I say it's a lot like drinking from the fire hose because it's so intense when you go into the store,
For
you
sure.
know, or like it's so yeah. It was like that a lot. Could resonate with that, like the
Mm.
feeling of being out and like everything was available at once, you know,
Yeah.
and that feeling of freedom, and you just take it all, and then it's just for me. I remember feeling like, oh my God, this is too much, you know.
Yeah.
I'm like floating in a sea, and I could go anywhere that I wanted, you know, and that's scary in itself.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So so yeah, I've been. I also need to say that I've laughed a lot about that word picante. You know, I saw it on something in a grocery store, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that word!" Because you said that was the word that they used for sharp, right?
Yeah.
Picante.
Yeah, I
Oh
know.
my gosh,
That translation was horrible.
I know. It's just so.
Terrible branding. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it worked. Everyone said that. Everyone said it. Do you know what? I
Mm,
just remembered like talking about how like this specific brand of Christianity, the one that we were
mhm,
finally able to break free, the
mhm,
ICOC, this white evangelical fundamentalist, high control, high demanding
mhm.
cultic group. When
Yeah.
they, what I hear is that when they arrive, they part from here, from Boston,
Mhm,
from you know, where else? Boston. They were, I think, 12 or 13. The stories they said is that they would write down what they were going to say because a good number of them didn't even speak Spanish.
mhm,
And they will just go outside in cold contact, inviting people to these Christian conferences. The invitation, again, I mentioned that last time, it was
mhm,
not church, it was a Christian conference, which sounded, I don't know, more professional, a better marketing than inviting someone to a church. Uh, and and how I remember being a young Christian, a very like recently baptized, and I got to meet someone in this. I used to do boxing, and I went to the place that I used to train at 18, and it was not at in college. It was in this other like fitness place. And
mhm.
obviously, as a good young recruit, I was already looking to like who am I gonna bring? Who am I gonna bring? I've been bringing everyone I knew.
Mhm,
Church. And I remember meeting this girl at the with my boxing team. And I was talking to her, trying to, connect. And then eventually, of course, inviting her. And she said to me, she looked at me and said, Tania, can I ask you a question? I was like, yeah. So you've been saying a few words that are really odd to me. And I want to ask you if you go to this specific church. And I was like, what? Yeah. You've been repeating like several times the word en español, in Spanish is increíble.
mhm.
Everything is increíble.
Yeah.
Increíble, increíble. And that's so, she told me, that's so weird because all the members of the church said that same word. Increíble was from the translation of all these missionaries, colonizers, used as awesome. Everything is awesome. You're awesome. This is awesome. That is awesome. And those are expressions we don't use. Like it
You
is
don't, you guys
not,
don't say increíble?
I
Because I remember
mean,
learning, I learned
you
that in
would
Spanish class.
for sure. I mean, you
Yeah,
would
yeah.
say it, but she said
Uh-huh.
it was so obvious to her. Like I kept repeating that word so much.
Mhm,
And this was part, language. I've learned
mhm,
this from this linguist I love. She's from Oaxaca, Mexico, and she
mhm,
speaks Ayuk, which is the original tongue they talk in her little town in Oaxaca. She
mhm,
learned Spanish. It's one of the like the people who actually didn't lose that much their original language. And she's a linguist, a very good one. And she used to say, language is political, language is a tool, and that's why it is important for the like these figures of power to disappear language and put their language, right?
mhm.
Um, I mean, the percentage of people in Mexico that speaks an original language is like less than 5% in the entire country.
Mhm.
So I now realize how important it was to change even the way we talked
Yeah.
in the ICOC. So nobody would repeat endlessly, increíble, increíble, nobody. But all these missionaries, that's the way they talked. Nobody would describe another person who find like she's really smart, or wow, like she's
Hmm.
important, or she has money, or
Hmm.
we like Mexicans would never describe someone as picante. Right? Like ever. But it
Yeah.
was translation from the word sharp that the missionaries brought to us. And that is really, it's really interesting to realize, Roy,
Hmm.
because developing a code, developing a language, also was part of controlling and
Hmm.
colonizing, right?
Well, isn't Mexico City now a result of, I mean, it's a result of European conquest, right? Because it was Cortez. God, I hope that's right.
Yeah.
Cortez came over with the Aztecs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, so it makes sense that to me that you would say that it was a colonization of the faith because the evangelicalism is very European, and European is about conquest. It's about, you know, growth, which is really interesting to think about. Um, but it's just, yeah, it's, I think about with like here in America with the Native Americans,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the kids would be put in schools to learn Christianity, learn their language, and they would be, you know, punished if they were using their native tongue because language is powerful. I agree with what you were saying.
Yeah.
Like it's a tool and it's how culture is moved. It's a part of how culture is moved. And so that's gotta be weird to understand, like that you were like inadvertently using a word that like is just not culturally like what you would use.
Yeah, there's so many so many of those words. You know how I mean, you were also single, well, a member of the
Mhm.
ICOC. So I remember being single. And someone mentioned like it didn't make sense to me when I was like, what are you saying? I remember one of these like friends of mine at the time who
Mhm.
was discipling me or some sorts, and she said to me like, oh, that brother is my that brother is my tuki tuki.
Tuki tuki.
And I was like, what? He's your what? Yeah, because when I see him, my heart goes tuk, 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 like, and that was kind of hilarious.
Yeah, we create our own language
Yeah,
in the church.
and isn't it too like, for example, you're a dad, right, of a
Mhm.
young
Yeah,
child.
young. Mhm.
I learned very early with my son how important, for example, was to teach him the actual name of things,
Yeah. Mhm.
because there's no need to infantilize them, treat them
Yeah.
like,
Mhm.
I mean, we would have, but we don't say, the parts of the body. The parts of the body had a name, and you tell them, from what they are
Yeah.
learning, the parts of the body,
Yep.
all of them,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But because by now we know a long time ago, we know no, like it's not helpful, because, for example, if one kid needs to tell you, hey, someone touched me, someone tried to, or this is your private space, like not giving the words, like I felt that now that infantilized us, preventing us to create relations with the other, like with the opposite sex, because those things
Wow.
talk.
Yeah. Mhm.
We
The
use
way
this.
we talk, yeah,
Mhm.
it it was very infantilizing and it stunted our growth in a lot of ways with how we felt about sex, how we felt about gender, the opposite gender roles, all of that. Wow, I'm really glad that you said that. It kind of
Yeah.
is like a bomb going off in my brain. I tell us because I feel a lot of times I feel, even though I'm 42, I feel 22
Hmm.
because of the things like that. Like it just we were like little kids running
Hmm.
around talking about girls and what we would say and like the things that I wish I had examples right now. I know it'll come to me, but just like oh, we just
Yeah.
yeah.
What
I
was the
think
name? Uh-huh. Go ahead.
I guess it was just how separate we were with each other with regards
Mm.
to like men and women. Um, you just don't learn how to interact. You don't learn how to like be approachable and to talk because we weren't around each other enough. And when you were, it was at a church function and it was weird and you were afraid of what you were going to say because you didn't want someone to struggle, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we weren't educated about anything going on in our bodies or anything going on about like relationship wise how to treat a woman. I mean, I think I kind of had a sense of how to treat a woman, but it was
Mm.
I don't know what now the words are escaping me, but it was just very like I do feel like I learned how to be a friend to a woman
Hmm.
before like looking at a woman and being like I can have a relationship with you and there's not going to be sex involved. But then it was just all the way to the extreme,
Yeah.
kind of. So,
And so all these words, so um remembering this phrase that I really like from this linguist, language is political,
mhm,
and also shapes your mind, shapes your expression, shapes your understanding of the world. I know we are, Mexico is a colonized, you know, culture.
mhm,
Obviously, one of the most powerful tools to for all this colonization was, of course, religion, and
mhm,
specifically Catholicism. But then facing this, because not only the ICSC goes to Mexico, right? Like, or Latin
yeah,
America in general. Like, there's so many missionaries. I never thought of myself, but now I know.
mhm,
When I became a missionary, like the correct name for that would be colonizer.
mhm,
I'm here, as once they did, the Spaniards did. I'm here to save you from yourself
mhm,
because you don't know the truth. And what is the truth? The one that I hold, the
mhm,
knowledge that I have. And in this sense of superiority, you get to see these other people like apparently because we're taught a lot about compassion, right? And
mhm,
people they shouldn't go to hell or they live senseless lives without a true purpose. But all those things just feed our sense of superiority. And then you come to this group of people, you come to this city. Imagine these 12, 13 missionaries from Boston coming to
mhm,
Mexico City, a big, huge city, and say, they don't know. Like, there's no church. Even that expression, Roy, there is no church in Mexico City. We need to sell one. What do you mean? There's numbers of churches. Yeah, but not the true and only one, right?
mhm. It
And obviously, like even just feeling like we don't really care about how things are here. This is how it is
mm,
supposed to be done. And from a place of privilege, I told you,
mhm,
who of them original missionaries to Mexico City lived in those places. Some others of us lately, I mean,
mhm,
yeah, late in the time will be in those like dangerous places. That would never be in those dangerous neighborhoods. They will never bring their own kids, or they will never send their kids at their schools, right? Their kids would go to these international schools that that are all around the world, right? American something where they speak English, or but never like never with really the people. They would live in these mansions far away from the like the neighbors, the neighborhoods, the hoods. And then from there, from that place of privilege, continue telling all these new people, all these new recruits, that's how, that's how you're supposed to be living.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Can you remember? Sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Mhm. I was just gonna say that the word that comes up for me is disrespect
Hmm.
when it comes to this, because I think it is audacious to go to someone because you have a group of people that are living and existing and thriving and they're living the life the way that they know. And you have these people coming in and saying the way you're doing it is wrong. It's like so disrespectful to think like that and how like prideful, right? And I think that a lot of times we as in Americans and these mission groups and these trips and all of this, like people from another country, it's like they're these little like they're smaller, they're
Hmm.
stupid. They become these little trinkets that these
Hmm.
people can collect,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And instead of like in what's the word? Like diving into the culture and being with the people and like just existing because I don't think that Jesus would do it that way. I don't think that he would come in like that and sit
Mm-mm.
from his high tower to tell all these people that you need to listen to me. He would be down there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
even to say that makes me feel bad because you're not
Why are you up there and the others down there, right?
down there. You're just there.
Yeah.
It's just hard to like it's like it's ingrained in us as people, as Americans and Europeans, to look at y'all like that. I think that it's it's crazy that
Hmm.
that is what we think.
Yeah. And you say it, Ro, you say, well, how audacious, how arrogant, how prideful to just come to this entire city and
Yeah.
say, this is the way you're supposed to, like your religion is trash, your
Yeah.
beliefs are trash. And and isn't that what colonizers do? Like that's
Hmm.
exactly what Spaniards did when they saw the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Toltecs, and say, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, they are worshiping the devil. They're witch,
Hmm.
they're witches and sorcerers, and they're so lost.
Yeah. Hmm.
We need to save them. But the truth was, we need all this richness, all this space, and well, these are savages anyway. So
Yeah. Hmm.
what we're doing for them is saving them souls.
Yeah.
And obviously we'll take all their gold and all their
Yeah.
every right, because they're soulless beasts or something.
Uh-huh.
So I feel like that same spirit was spread through all these missions coming
Hmm.
from Boston. Because, after the vision of one man saying, let's save the world in one generation, and everyone worked for that, right? Um, and one time I felt, I remember feeling like I asked one of the elders, the main elder at the time here in Boston, I asked him very sincerely when I was starting living here in Boston. I went to him and asked him, why exactly did you send this specific guy as leader of the
Hmm.
mission to Mexico City? Didn't you know how toxic he was? Like, do you know how many problems since the very beginning the ICOs in Mexico has? Like, I wish, and I told him, and he only laughed because what else he was gonna do or say. I told him, I wish you would have sent someone a little more like um healthy.
Mhm.
That specific guy was such a terrible influence. And obviously that was the goal. Everyone would just behave like him, would like to be like him. All the Mexicans who were
Mhm.
starting to be converted aspired to be like the leader of the mission, reproduce them. The colonization had to do also with the way we dressed, right? Like
Mhm.
we, I lived that. I lived all of that. We should dress in a certain way. Campus
Mhm.
students, uh, we should like especially the ones who were like aspiring to become to preach, to share something, they needed to talk in a certain way. Everyone would say the same words, even if in Spanish wouldn't make any sense. That didn't matter. They know better. They know better. And we
Mhm.
just should change our way of talking and dressing and presenting ourselves, right?
Yeah, it's like in order to have in order to have the truth have salvation, you have to lose all that is you. And like, is that really is that really the truth then?
Mhm.
Right? Shouldn't it be like the you that is you is just comes out more? But
Exactly.
that happened here in America too. I mean, the leaders, you start acting like you do the same things because they have that the brass ring that everybody wants. They have the thing, and so you're going to be like them and you're going to do like them and talk like them, and it just feeds their like narcissism, I guess.
For sure. And then I was listening to Dr. Janla Landlich. Sorry,
Mhm.
maybe I mispronounced it. This doctor who's a specialist in cult sue and
Mhm.
how like one of the goals of a cult would be eventually just send this, what's the name she uses? Like deployable agents, like,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? And and I was like, when I was listening to that, I was like, oh my God, what a great agent I became. Like,
Mhm.
I mentioned that before, like being absolutely sold out, feeling like God just gave me everything. And probably
Mhm.
that was right, that was correct, but that didn't mean now I'm ready to do anything for the ICOC, right?
Yeah.
Like the perfect deployable agent. And now you become this, even all this nonsense that feels like it's not important, like now you're gonna complain about the words we were taught to say and it's innocent and it's fun. It is not. Like it
Mhm.
had an impact on all of us, right? Like I would say from a number of years, I decided I would not use the word increíble. I would not use the word struggling,
Mhm.
which was in Spanish, we would say luchando. How are you?
Lu-
Estoy luchando. I'm struggling,
Estoy
right?
luchando.
Which is a very different, right? Like again, nobody said that necessarily.
Mhm.
Instead of saying what, there was another word. Oh, when you were really touched by something, uh,
Uh-huh.
you would say estoy cortado, like cut. Like after, I don't know, after
Uh-huh.
studying the study of the cross,
You're
estoy
cut to the heart.
cortado.
Yeah.
Again,
Wow.
nobody said Nadie dice estoy cortado. Nobody said that. And how do you say, what word you used, Roy, when you were a single, when you were single and you say, oh, someone, I'm interested in this,
Oh, we're
what
pursuing.
pursuing. That has like, what would you say? What would it say?
I was gonna talk about that word after you were finished because I think that word to me is the weirdest way to like talk about an attraction because you're pursuing. I was writing about this. It's like
Hmm.
the woman is this like gazelle, and you're the lion, and you're pursuing the gazelle to attack and to get, you know?
Exactly. Even,
And yeah,
no, go ahead.
it's just weird because and it like it shifts how you view like words are I said this years ago in one of my episodes where I said words create your reality.
Hmm.
And this is exactly what we're talking about because it shifted how I viewed women. Women were things to be pursued. They were things to be like fought. And then it messed me up because they're not just the girls, they're sisters. And so that even that is hard for me to you can say like it's exactly what you're saying. You can say that it's not that big a deal, but it's a huge deal.
It is.
Um, because yeah, it's something that I've had to constantly, I have to like try to like get out of my head, you
Hmm.
know.
For
But
sure.
yeah, it creates how we view the world, the words we use, what we think is possible. It's powerful. And back to what you were saying about kids, like the way that like you have to use we use the words of the body with him as well. And yes, sometimes he says it in places that he's not supposed to, but we have conversations with him about when to use it and when it's not, because I don't want to have my kid to be 23 and he can't say penis. He says wee wee.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
ridiculous, right?
Exactly. And again, this process of it adds to the isolation. It adds to the also to the feeling of belonging. It also adds to the infantilization of
Mhm.
young adults. It gives you a specialized language, right? To
Yeah.
separate from others.
Mhm.
All kinds of words, discipleship, disciple, the quiet time, Bible talk, like none of this
Mhm.
word makes sense, especially the discipleship. Like right now, you get to listen to that word more and more in many other, religious groups. But at the time, I mean, or maybe because I was that ignorant and I've never visited any other and non-Catholic church ever in my life, and I didn't know anything
Mhm.
about evangelicalism. But those all those expressions just and even isn't it true that diminishing like minimizing your language it is also minimizing your vision.
Mhm. Of
It
course.
like
Mhm.
you just have a few words to describe your reality and then your
Mhm.
reality become that small and it feels
Yeah.
safe, but it's not the truth. Like there's a world around you, but that's prohibited because it's from the world.
Mhm.
Uh, I mentioned a little about this, but when I dare to name things like patriarchy, misogynism, sexism, uh, oh my goodness, if I dare to throw, I think I dare to throw the word colonialism in a staff meeting. I was rebuked and
Uh-huh.
asked to go back and use the Bible because first of all, none of those region leaders were supposed to at least, I know that at least they went to college, from what I know.
Mhm.
All of them, at least they went to college. They don't know what I'm talking about. And they won't listen because I'm using the words of the world and I was supposed to communicate through scriptures. That way, all of them will listen to me. And
Please. Yeah. Uh-huh.
oh, so that also became a tool of control for sure. So it was very interesting. Get to see after that girl, that
Mhm.
initial girl I was sharing about told me, yeah, you've been using increíble so many times. And you did also say that, and I've only listened those words, specific words from these people who were trying to study the Bible with me, make and they wanted me to get baptized. And so, are you a member of that? With such horror. And I was so embarrassed, I stopped inviting her. Like, I wouldn't
Yeah.
go.
Uh-huh.
but I wouldn't question myself. I had no space for that in my mind, right? It's again,
Mhm.
someone who's strict by the devil, someone ignorant. Oh, she was studying the Bible, but then she didn't want to. Well, yeah, she's lost. But
She's lost. That's another one. Hmm.
yeah, and I discovered that this is really interesting. When I moved to Boston, I discovered that here at Lost, I don't know if it's everywhere, but I discovered that specifically staff members, region leaders specifically,
Hmm.
they used this word Gentile so much. Like
Really?
oh these for example they were sharing something like, oh, this group of teens or these teens brought some friends from school, all Gentiles. And at the beginning I was like, what are they saying? I
You can't.
didn't get it.
That's hilarious. Yeah,
and,
that's what? What? It doesn't
and
make sense.
it was said with so much pride because these kids, these teens, members of the ICOC, brought to a meeting or
Uh-huh.
event for teens, brought all this group, these new teens to visit, another word,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
visit, uh, and they were Gentiles. As this is so cool because these are not the kids of members. And then I had to discover, what do they mean? What are they talking about? Uh, and they meant uh, these kids basically didn't have any relatives in the ICOC.
Uh-huh.
And I remember telling my husband, like, that is so arrogant. Like, I mean, if we're getting into like, and it is even cultural appropriation.
Yeah, it is. It's yeah, because that is a word that Jewish people use for people who aren't Jewish. Like,
Exactly. And I'm like, I mean,
and
all of us are Gentiles for Jews.
and you could kind of make a stretch. Yeah, we're all Gentiles. We could you could also make a stretch that like when someone's referred to as a Gentile in some of the Old Testament books, it's not a nice thing.
Is not.
It's
It,
not, and it's like can't use that. It's like not the word. Come on, man.
it's
Pick a different word.
horrible.
It
And
is horrible. Yeah.
it was used
Hmm.
by the lead evangelists and all the region leaders whenever they shared about teens bringing Gentile teens. And I felt
They
like,
probably thought they were so cool using that word. Hmm.
I think so, but like again, it comes from a place of superiority, a place
Yeah.
of cultural
Hmm.
appropriation, and the
Hmm.
place of again, arrogance. And basically they're not only lost, but
Hmm.
no one in their family are members of the ICOC. So the name
Yeah.
they used to refer to them is Gentiles. So that's why it's
That's
so
silly.
like, it's so intense, so sad at the same time. And
Mhm.
um, in many, another thing that I was thinking, the date culture. I'm still learning. I was already
Mhm.
married when I moved to the United States. I'm learning more and more. I think now that I have a kid who will be, is a teenager. So I think I'm learning what that means here now. I
Mhm.
have I'm learning.
Yeah.
But this culture of dating here, that was also brought.
In
And
what way? Like, is it different? Like dating in Mexico is different than we would date in America? How so?
yes. So dating, uh it doesn't exist as in the United States, because when you were dating someone in Mexico, it's because you're like seeing someone exclusively and probably thinking about marriage, right?
Okay.
Uh so you would say, I'm going out with someone, and then you might say, oh, this is my boyfriend or my girlfriend.
Mhm.
But dating sounded like very, very formal, like you're obviously in this way of
Mhm.
formalizing the relationship or getting married eventually. But the central part, I think it was like the dating approach of double dating. You inviting someone, that was never
Mhm.
the case. Like, and besides, and remember, this is Mexico. Um, most of us, uh, we don't live, we live with our parents. We don't live in campus. Uh, I can count with one hand the number of students who had a car, right? Like
Yeah,
we don't have a car to pick someone or taking anywhere. We would use public transportation. You don't have the money. You don't have the money to invite someone every Saturday and pay it for them.
yeah.
And it
We didn't
felt
either. We didn't have the money either, but I didn't.
okay.
All
Okay.
my friends didn't either, but it's still, but keep going. I'm sorry.
No, no. I mean, that was just brought and imposed. And it felt
Yeah.
so weird. Like it felt like, why in the world would I need to go out with someone because it's my brother and sister, or it's my brother and I need to care for him because that way he won't look outside and
Yeah.
follow someone
We were
else.
protecting you. And you were protecting us.
Exactly. So but all that, like all the
Mhm.
rules, all the we were told like how many hours we could go on a date. A date couldn't be
Wow.
longer than 4 hours or 6 hours, depending on how far
Mm.
you should drop someone off. Almost no one had a car. Uh, yeah, I never go outside, never go out with anyone, just you and him,
Mhm.
at least another couple. And that's not the culture. The culture, it's going in groups, right? Going
Mhm.
out, having a little party in someone's house. Uh, yeah, like in general,
Just
honestly,
hanging out together,
just
just
hanging
being
out
together. It's fine. Nothing's gonna
after,
happen.
exactly,
Yeah.
after school, because you don't really have the money to necessarily to go anywhere
Yeah. Hmm.
after school, going in groups, going together, and but changing all that and make it the right way to
Hmm.
relate to the opposite sex was
Yep.
very harmful.
Yeah. I bet. Was it hard as the receiver of these dates?
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Hmm.
I remember feeling so overwhelmed by all the things we should be doing during the week. And
Yeah.
then
Hmm.
in their midweek service, I sometimes I would just go and hide in the bathroom
Nice. I'm sorry. I
to
did the
avoid
same thing sometimes.
to avoid
Yeah.
being asked to go out because I was supposed, like I was rebuked once. Like you don't say no. You don't say no. That's prideful. Who do you think you are? It is a privilege that anyone asks you out.
Oh my gosh. For like that. I wish I was surprised by that. I want to be. That's
And
God. That's fucked up. I'm sorry to
it
say
is.
that, but
Oh,
yeah. How is it a privilege if you can't say no?
yeah, because it is a privilege to serve. It is a privilege to take care of each other. It is a privilege to
Hmm.
not be tempted by the world and all these awful men or women who are trying to, rob us
Hmm.
soul or attention from God. And I mean,
Yeah.
people was not the problem. Like I remember, I think I mentioned that last time. What a huge group of young people I was part of in Mexico. It was huge.
Hmm.
That's why I was so tired and I didn't want to go out. Not because I didn't like, the brothers, but because I
Hmm.
was so tired. I needed a day to wash my clothes, to clean my room, to actually help at home because I was not in my house the entire week for school and ministry.
Hmm.
That's why I didn't want to go out. I was so tired. I needed to sleep a little and then being able to do something at home. And
Hmm.
and yet, again, like people were fun, people were nice, people were like we were all playing along. But it was very clear since the beginning, you don't say no.
Hmm.
You don't say no, and you're thankful. We were instructed to keep something at the end, like the following day. The following day, you needed to come with
Yeah,
a card or something to say thank you.
I know. It it was something that I expected. And I hate that I expected it now because I think it perpetuated a cycle of like I deserve a cookie for everything. I've said this many times. I'll always say it. I think the only thing it does is make boys feel like they need to have anything for just being they need to have a reward for just being a decent person.
A decent
Like,
person. Yeah.
because I went on a date with a woman and treated her nice and I didn't force myself on her, I should get a reward. Like that's essentially what we're perpetuating.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Exactly. And then
uh,
sorry, go ahead.
but I was saying like, and I hope that like, because I did post that Instagram post, I hope that when two other girls that were on here, they actually sent me cookies as like and I hope it was like a joke because it's perceived as a joke. It was not like perceived as like, I did think it was nice that I finally got some fucking cookies. Because I never, because the history of me is, God, that's what I'm known for, the guy that didn't get cookies at church.
Oh,
But like that's, yeah,
wow.
I never got it. But yeah, it's really, it really shifts our reality. It shifts our reality in a big way when like
Mhm.
you can't say no. I have to take this girl out and then I'm expected to get something in return. Like it's wild what that how that shapes how we view everything.
And now imagine this culture, this colonization in this specific realm of being single and dating someone. Imagine the harm to a society, to a culture that is
Mm-hmm.
already so deep and
Mm-hmm.
sexism and misogynism. Like I don't know if you know this, Roy, but 10 women in Mexico are killed every day. I'm not exaggerating.
Mm-hmm.
Every day just for being women. They're called feminicides, feminicidios.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine what it what does for culture like that one. Like to
Mm-hmm.
this day, women walked with fear. Women can be disappeared, women can be killed just
Mm-hmm.
because women, just because they're inferior, just because they're, disposable. So this is not helpful. This word you used, pursue,
Yeah.
right? Making a dynamic, easing a dynamic of the hunter um
Pray.
and the
Yeah.
prey. Thank you.
Mhm.
And then telling you, well, you have to because it's a privilege, and then also like eventually all the other things you end up understanding or listening. I said again about the marriages, like weddings are not like that in this culture, but everyone since the beginning of the ICOC starting doing weddings as in the United States. Like
Mm-hmm.
why? Right? The last names. Let me open the door to my cat because he
Mm-hmm.
won't stop. Yeah, sorry.
No
And
worries.
so that's really it. Some people would say, some of my friends would say, well, we had so much fun. Yes, Jude always had someone to hang out with.
Mm-hmm.
I know I have a good number of friends. I think I was one of the privileged one. Like someone asked me out almost every week. I even needed to hide, right? But and and yet, years after, with all this perspective, you feel like, and it added to the, yeah, to the pain. It added,
Mm,
and I have friends who were not asked to go out. I have friends who it was not easy at all for them to find someone to get married, or ended up in marriages, terrible marriages, because that was the
mhm,
advice, right? Like all the way to violence. Um, and yeah, all kinds of violence, backed by this culture, the
mhm.
culture of the ICOC, and that had to do with our role in the church too.
Your role is in a woman, or your role is in just just being a part of the church?
No, definitely as a woman.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
And mhm.
Okay, go ahead. No, it's fine. Or
uh, yeah, so you're supposed to, I remember being told things like, brothers need to be, since you are so outgoing and so passionate and you have your voice and you're a leader, remember to go down so the brother can, rise up to the occasion. Like,
huh?
be, uh-huh.
What?
Yeah, like, some people might be feel insecure. So that's when you are supposed to be like, submit and let them lead.
Yeah. Hmm.
And because I remember being told things like, we are responsible to lift brothers up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and be like great cheerleaders and be like the ones who are going to not complain but support and encourage. And so yeah, again, I feel like my experience in dating was privileged in many ways, but also I also had my own part of all the purity culture and all
Hmm.
the damage that's there. I remember being when I was a missionary in Cuba, I started dating this young Christian Cuban, and it took us like 2 years to start dating because he was told, "Oh, it is so obvious that you like Tania. So you really need to work on that and on yourself. So before inviting her again out, you need to invite every sister before being able to invite her again."
Yeah. Hmm.
So yeah, that was very controlling, right? Like,
Hmm.
and even this topic when we were trying to invite everyone here in Boston last year to consider, what if not only we treat respectfully and considerate the people who have suffered all this abuse in the Spanish speaking ministry, why don't we take advantage of this time and once and for all uh, stop doing the things that are obviously making us cultic,
Hmm.
like telling singles who they can date.
Hmm.
And it was like, just mention that to this day, 2024, 2023, last year, just mentioning that was like, what are you talking about? People need to, like, they don't know what to do. They don't know what's their best for them.
Yeah. Yeah. You get that sense. I mean, the leaders had that feeling like we don't know what we don't really know ourselves. we have to be told what to do, you know. It's it was so wild because I remember watching friends who like were attracted to each other, liked each other, and watching how they had to go on all these other dates, and it it was so silly,
I know.
you know. Because I always was like, I wonder if the girl that this guy's taking out knows he's doing this just for the encouragement, like to look good, you know, and
Yeah,
how that made her feel.
exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. And I want to, if may I want to read you something
Yeah.
because sometimes it feels like, oh, yeah, well, that's because that happened, what, 10 years ago, 20
Hmm.
years ago?
Oh, the
And
sense that like it doesn't happen now. This was something that happened back then. Yeah.
exactly. So, at some point during our process of leaving the full-time ministry, I was given this warning
Hmm.
after trying to bring the topic of the um, sexual abuse of minors, etc. I
Hmm.
mentioned last time. I was given this warning, and one of the things it was um, yeah, I was told this um, on multiple occasions in public settings with the staff and in private conversation with at least um, the lead evangelist and his wife. Um, Tania have expressed beliefs contrary to the Christian beliefs we feel that ministry staff need to hold to in order to do their jobs effectively. For example, Tania has advocated that Christians should date those who do not believe in Christ during a region leader meeting in the summer of 2022. In addition, Tania has objected to the church's view of biblical roles in a marriage. It is not only that she has expressed these views, but that she presently holds to them.
Hmm.
I I I joke with my friends here and say like, "Oh, one of these days I need to put a frame to this warning
Uh-huh.
because it's beautiful. It reminds me of um, it reminds me of how okay it is to not feel okay anymore with this
Hmm.
abusive, wrong things, right? So many things in just this one, because it has like one, two, three, four different things I was warned about before being let go. And this part of Tania has advocated for Christians should date who do not believe in Christ. Obviously, obviously, it was not said like that. But you know what?
Yeah.
I mean, it is appalling to remember believing that people should just date the members of the cult. And
Hmm.
that is the only thing that it's okay, right? And just saying, can we trust in singles? Can we trust, first of all, that they have the spirit, supposedly, right? Can we trust that they have the Bible? Can we trust that they're adults? Can we just stop telling them who they can date or cannot? And obviously it was a no,
Yeah. Hmm.
ever.
It,
So
there's
this
yeah.
is like 2023.
Yeah, I mean, I had someone on he grew up in the church. He left kind of this around the same time you did, and he was saying some of the same things.
Yeah.
Um, it's just interesting to hear about like within our culture of, the marriage and relationships, just that idea that like men will always be bigger than the women.
Hmm.
Like we're the ones that are to be. It's interesting that you said that like you guys are your main role is to build us up. It's like we're these fragile little creatures, that need you because we can't handle the fact a woman being strong or having an opinion. Like it's weird because it's making you guys inferior, but in the same time, it's making us inferior as well. It's weird. It's I hate that view. Like we hold on to this, like we're so afraid our masculinity is supposed to be so strong and so nice, but it's really so fragile. And it's viewed as fragile, and everyone knows that it's fragile. And
Mhm.
it's hilarious because and terrible at the same time that
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like in the end, it is all about control. And
yeah,
yeah, you were saying it like, what do leaders really believe about them members?
uh-huh,
It is like, it's like, there's such a disconnection to reality and to consideration and respect for people.
hmm
Nothing close to, shepherding. Um, I mean, is this very twisted? Because obviously, in our minds or in their minds, it's like, it's because we love them. They don't know what to do. That's why we need to tell them. That's why they cannot just go and date anyone.
yeah, yeah,
And that was said to me directly without any shame. I
yeah,
was told by the woman who was discipling me at the time, Tania, what are you talking about? I'm so worried. Singles cannot, like, can they will just do a disaster, as if everyone who followed all the prescriptions
hmm
were super happy and healthy. There's some people who have been, lucky enough,
hmm
but there's so many who just suffered so much. We're still suffering in miserable relationships.
and at the same time, like I mean, I did it supposedly the right way and it failed. It was a disaster. It became a disaster
Hmm.
on in one hand, and at the same
Mhm.
time I've done it the quote unquote wrong way and it was amazing.
Yeah.
But like yes, of course, like you're gonna date and it's just silly to think that like you do it one way and then everything's gonna be perfect because that's not how life is. You go on dates, it works, it doesn't work, you try again, you date someone else, you go out. I mean, it's just that's just how it is.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's just that like that view that we just can't control ourselves is something that's like really hard for me to like reconcile with, to not be angry at those people still.
Yeah.
That we're like we're so I'm using fragile again, but we can't
Hmm.
control ourselves,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Like you don't know. And because we love, because we care, we're going to do it for you. And
Yeah.
obviously, then later, so many people would feel so hurt by, I don't really know how to act now. As you said, Roy, like
hmm
I might be in my 40s, but I still feel like I don't know so many things.
Yeah.
I don't know how to behave. I don't know how to do so many different things. And so many people was just in such a danger because of
hmm
that, because of
Yeah, it
that.
puts 'cause once they leave the church, they're at such a, I don't want to use disadvantage, but that's kind of where they're at because they just don't know it. And it puts themselves in situations that they shouldn't be in, you know?
And
So,
this is another example of being a colonizer.
mhm.
Again, this same role of you don't know, I know better.
Yeah.
Your view is poor, your knowledge is almost none. You're basically a savage, a beast.
hmm
You need to be guided, not even guided, you need to be controlled.
Hmm.
And that just keep, going, one soldier after another, one recruit after another.
Hmm.
And then when you feel like, "Oh, but this doesn't feel right. Oh, it must." You know what other thing it's very sad from colonization? And I think I mentioned this before too, like this uh, generational trauma that we might carry. And some of that is not even from my parents or my grandparents, but also these generational trauma from being a colonized nation. How then the colonizer hasn't been there for what? Centuries, right?
Hmm.
But they're still there.
Yeah.
And it also, like, it plays in the same way when, after being indoctrinated, after being told that this is a way and you work hard and you got into it with all your heart, then you don't even need anyone to tell you anything. The colonizer is already there telling you, oh, that's because yeah, that's because you didn't read your Bible this morning. Oh, it
Mm.
happened because
Yeah.
you didn't pray enough. Oh, yeah, see, that's
Hmm.
because you didn't talk to your discipler. Like, or the fear or the anxious or the feeling of it's never enough. Like, I didn't need anyone to tell me so many things that I did by myself. So this voice was already there, and it was definitely, I mean, sometimes I really believe this is God's voice. This is, not that I
Yeah.
hear a
Hmm.
voice, but this is God's will.
Yeah.
I should submit. I should trust. I should sacrifice. I should just obey, because obeying is reward. It's rewarded always. I
Yeah.
even I remember even saying out loud, you know, I say this out loud. Even if that person gave me an awful advice, God made it a blessing for me. So I would even,
Wow.
justify
Mhm.
something that's something really stupid or dangerous or awful that someone told me. I would end up justifying it, saying, yeah, but God make it work for me for the good. Instead of saying that was abusive, that was out of nowhere, that was ignorant, that was arrogant. Now it was like, yeah, yeah, she did that.
Mhm.
He did that. But, you know, how do you call those, Roy? These kind of like mantras that you just say to yourself to
Mhm. Yeah.
disconnect.
I mean, mantra. Yeah. Or just, yeah.
We would
Mantra
say,
works.
yeah, we would say things like, God knows, it's
Mhm.
God's will, God is in control,
Mhm.
to gaslight ourselves, to avoid recognizing what this person just said is, it is not only awful, like terrible, but
Mhm.
it's so hurtful. And then you'll say because you will repeat that to you, right? God
Mhm.
will work God will work for good with me. God will bless the obedience. God will need me to have a simple faith. And simple faith sometimes meant don't think, disconnect your brain. Don't feel, disconnect your body.
Mhm.
Disconnect your brain, your intelligence, right?
Yeah. It's we're using this word colonizer, and I was thinking about what you said earlier about the reaction of the leader when you use misogynistic, um, colonialism, patriarchy, those words. It's I think a lot of times we've been trained or showed images of like what a colonizer is,
Mm,
or what a racist is, or what
mm,
a misogynist is. And so we get these pictures in our brains about that. And I think for colonizer, I think the image that comes in my head is like, well, we'll just say Cortez, like hundreds of years ago.
mm-hmm,
And it's like, no, that's not what we're doing. That was done then. Or like if someone calls, you say you're a racist, it's like as a white person, your immediate response is like, I'm not a racist. I'm not this Klan member that's like lynching people or stuff like that. It's just like these words carry these images, and it's hard for us to hear them, like to disassociate, to see that like no, like racism is more than that, or like
Hmm.
colonialism is more than just what we're thinking it is. Misogyny is these little things that you're doing, not these big aggressive acts.
Hmm.
And it's very challenging, like I said, to separate that and to own what is actually going on. And it's the same thing. Like a lot of people don't understand what colonialism is. A lot of people don't understand what misogyny is.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think the way that the news and the information we're giving, it's done in a way to whip us all into a frenzy. We're given we're given the most extreme example.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that makes
Yeah, you
sense,
don't want
right?
to be you don't
Yeah.
want to be related to that, right? Like
Yeah. Hmm.
you don't want to be considered that at all. And um I have two ideas that I think might be helpful.
Hmm.
The same linguist I really love. Her name is Yasnaya Aguilar. Um,
Hmm.
she mentions in her text a very interesting example that I really love. In order to start to understand how deep colonialism runs, and that is, she says something like, "There's imagine this holy trinity, right?
Hmm.
But the holy trinity of the systems we lived in is number one, colonialism,
Hmm.
number two, patriarchy, and number three, capitalism. And but the first of all, like the father of all, it's colonialism.
Hmm.
And it's like the three are one and they have their same, characteristics.
Hmm.
And just to understand how um and obviously from colonialism would also we would also find the roots of racism and colorism and who's important, who's not, who's educated, who's a savage, who's worth, who's not worth, and how important it is to question this trinity.
Hmm.
Like, is it only these? I mean, we've been living in this reality for yeah, centuries now, but is it really the only possibility? Is it really the only way to, for example, to walk with someone in their spiritual journey by telling them what to do, how to behave, what to believe? Or is it possible to walk together and discover or
Hmm.
remember our original design and connect or reconnect um, with the spirit and with what it is already in you, right? Because we are so used to this other view of someone need to teach you because you don't know.
Hmm.
Uh, so questioning one will only happen if you question the other two, and it's so hard because this is the only
Yeah,
thing
it
we've known
is.
so far,
Yeah.
right?
So what you're saying is our view of like not trusting, we don't know, you could associate that with colonialism because of the way they would come in.
Also,
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And even when you were not like, bro, you're not Mexican. I don't know.
Wait, what? No, I'm just sorry.
I have news for you. You're not Mexican. I don't know where your ancestors are from, but even when you didn't live or your nation didn't experience that firsthand.
Mhm.
I don't know exactly where your ancestors are from, but you were colonized in your faith.
Yeah.
No, none of them needed an armor and a shield and something to like.
Yeah.
But by making you submit to this system, controlling how you behave, how you thought, how you dress, who you relate to, how you relate to your body, how you relate to the rest of the world. to the opposite sex.
Hmm.
It made you someone who was colonized, someone else with yeah, I know, like our situations might differ in that you were born in it,
Hmm.
and I became part of it when I was 18, but and yet both of us were vulnerable, willing to please, especially like, I don't know, our
Yeah.
parents,
Hmm.
authority figures. And it is, I think consider this what might be helpful to relate to how it is to being robbed or your identity, of
Hmm.
your space, of your security, of your, again, your original design. I mean, we were supposed to be created good. So we were not supposed to be flawed and in need
Hmm.
of anything, right? And just by being told, someone else needs to tell you how to relate to the God, right? To the spirit, or um recognizing, yeah, it was actually a very violent act. um and it shattered so many things from your soul and your mind and your, even your body.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think, mhm,
It's just that view of not trusting yourself because it's the hardest thing to get back,
yeah,
right? Like to really start to trust yourself
yeah,
is, I mean, a lot of people deal with this. It's like people deal with that sense of not being able to trust themselves. But I think for us, like it was paramount in our faith was that don't trust what you're feeling. It could be something, it could be the devil, it could be someone else. Like, listen to me.
yeah,
I know what's right. You don't know what's right.
yeah,
And that like feeling doesn't just go away. Like we can leave the church, but it does like I still feel that,
yeah.
you know. I question things so much, you know,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
it was taken from us, you know.
Yeah, yeah. And then this other, like,
Mhm.
I said I had two ideas. I just forgot the other one.
It's okay.
But
Um,
talking about this
yeah.
other topic, yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I think I was gonna move to talking about because you were talking about how with being a woman specifically in church and like things that I think about, like from what I'm getting, it's like there was that feeling of inferiority. Like,
Mm,
is that true? Like you were lower than us.
of course. Of
Mhm.
course. It was very clear since the beginning. Um,
Yeah. Did you feel like there was a ceiling with like what you could accomplish or be or do
Absolutely.
in church?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
As a member,
Hmm.
uh, and then as a staff, as part of the staff.
Now, do you think it
Um,
was, I'm sorry,
no,
I
no, that's fine.
interrupted. Do you think that it was more apparent because uh you're Mexican and a woman? Do you think that played into it as well?
Yeah. I felt that especially here in Boston. I think
Uh-huh.
I never really experienced it in that way while living
Hmm.
in Mexico. Um, I'd say Mexico was very clear, how it would be so important, first of all, to be eventually be married, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, if I the thing is that I never really thought of myself as I want to lead this or that. I just wanted to
Hmm.
serve. Um, but then it really became possible once I got married. And it was so important to be married to someone who would feel really like strong about the ministry and the mission and everything.
Yeah.
Uh, and fortunately, I got to develop a great relationship with my husband. I think we were able to work and to enjoy a really good friendship to this day.
Hmm.
And he doesn't tend like easily to the misogynistic, to be, yeah, to be like sexist or things like that. We
Hmm.
always had great conversations and everything, but in the end, you really needed to conform to things, especially when you are leading others, right? And I don't know, I remember being recently married and sat with our disciples. I can remember a couple of times while being on staff and sitting with this couple that was discipling us. And for some reason, the guy would start talking to my husband about something I did wrong, as if I was not there.
So you were
Like,
standing right there?
yeah, like I was there
Yeah.
with my husband, and he would say to him, well, what Tanya did, but to him, instead of telling me, Tanya,
Yeah.
I don't think what you did was right. He was telling him because he was supposed to help me to do better. Uh, One time we were already living
Like,
here.
what is that? How does that make you like? To me, that feels there's like rage that comes up for me. Like, how does that?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. But then there's all these like I need to submit, submit to the leaders because
Yeah.
they work
Hmm.
tirelessly for you. Uh, this sense
They
of
don't work tirelessly for us. What are you talking about? We're the ones that
considering
would work tirelessly. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I know that's true. And and then I was just feeling like ugh, he doesn't know me. He doesn't like obviously my husband would not do that. But yet there was still again this very little like voice of telling like you're supposed to be following Christ and Christ would submit. And that is always like used against us, right? Uh
Like you as in it would use against you as women,
yeah.
like
Like
Christ would submit.
yeah, and this is a man, this is a
Uh-huh.
leader, this is the guy, because it was not even like the wife was there, right there in front of me. Even if she would tell me, which would be like we're talking together, she could totally just said, Tanya, I think I can't even remember what happened. What you did was not wrong. I think, right there. But no, it was him
Hmm.
telling my husband to help me because I did not write. So all that, as I was saying before, like all that misogynistic way of being, the culture, the
Hmm.
story, that just added more and more pain, just gave the male members of the ICOC free pass
Hmm.
to believe that all women in the ICOC need to submit to any brother in the ICOC. Like if you were,
Hmm.
any member and like you just saw me and you thought I did something incorrect, you would have the authority to tell me anything because
Yeah.
you're a
Hmm.
man. That's it.
I mean, it's incredibly like it's incredibly beneficial to be a man in a church and in the purity culture. Like I think about that more and more. How I mean, I can see why people stay because, you know, even in purity culture, I mean, it's all about us essentially.
Yeah.
Um, we're gonna get the you said a free pass. We'll get the free pass if something happens. We'll get the benefit of the doubt. You will get all the shame and the retribution and the I don't know what's the other word, like you lose all the respect. We'll get a talking to, but it's fine. Then we become the mouthpiece of the marriage. We become the leaders. We become it all. I mean, it's all designed for us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Exactly. And then this
Which is
teaching.
so opposite. It's
Mhm.
just so opposite when you read interactions that Jesus had with people, with women, like his respect for women, his inclusion of women, like the Samaritan woman. He walks up to
Mhm.
her and she becomes oh my God, I'm losing the words now because I'm so worked up. Sorry, but it's like
Sorry.
he walks up to her and tells her and treats her as an equal in that scenario.
Interaction. Hmm.
Um, the adulterous woman, how he responds to her. It was just it there was just a you can get this sense of respect for women, but
Yeah.
then it's used in such an opposite way for us, and it's yeah.
Exactly. I can even think of now that you mentioned some interactions of Jesus with women, at least the ones that we get to read in the Bible.
Yeah. Hmm.
I remember this one that my favorite is the one with the woman who was from I don't know how to say it in English, Syrophoenicia. Remember this like Syrophoeni, I don't know how to say it in English.
Hmm.
So this woman comes to Jesus. She's asking him to heal her daughter.
Hmm.
And that's when Jesus said, no, because I came to the people of Israel and I
Hmm.
won't give the food for the dogs that it's been that
Yeah.
used
Hmm.
to be. Do you remember that?
Hmm.
How would you call that woman? Well, that
I don't
woman.
know, but I remember what. Yeah, I know the interaction you're talking about.
Okay, so I love that interaction because it has to do so little with the interactions we were trained to have in the ICOC. Because uh, when she answers Jesus, she said, and we tend to imagine, or I don't know if that happens to you, but we tend to imagine women like using soft voices.
Hmm.
Yes, right? I mean, I don't think so. Like
Hmm.
thinking about myself as a mom, knowing this guy can actually help my child, and your answer is, I cannot help you because you're a dog and this
Yeah.
is
No.
for the kids. I will be pleasantly talking, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
I imagine, and I have the right to imagine that, I imagine this woman telling Jesus, yes, but even the dogs, I would be really sarcastic.
Hmm.
Even the dogs can feed with the, I don't know how to say
I
it.
think it's like the scraps from the table or something like
Exactly.
that. Hmm.
Even the dogs
Yeah.
can feed themselves with the scraps, right?
Yeah.
And in that little interaction, basically it is a woman calling in, today's words we might use. It's a woman calling Jesus out for the racism.
Hmm. Yeah.
And he's disrespectful of a woman in need, asking
Yeah.
something not for her, but for her child. And the answer of Jesus was not defensive, was not, who do you think you are? Stupid woman. Don't you know who I? Nothing like that. As any evangelist I know would answer,
Yeah. Hmm.
he would say, your faith is amazing. This woman called something really big out. And I would say, I would even dare to say Jesus learned from this woman, learned
Hmm.
about his own prejudices, talking
Yeah.
about his people is just this, the others are dogs.
Hmm.
That's huge. That's Jesus
Yeah.
probably expressing as someone that today would call racist or.
Hmm. And I think that like when I read these passages about Jesus, I always feel like there's an intentionality in these scenarios. Like it's not just by happenstance that like they're using the characters in these stories.
Yeah.
There's like a reason, and it's to show something for us to learn. And I think it's important. But like those type of passages or stories that I remember it, but it wasn't like it was like we talked about it a lot. But I think I remember with like the Samaritan woman, I've been looking into that one a little bit more these last few weeks, it was like it was always like we always diminished who she was. There was always this reason like she was either like a widow,
A
she was like,
failure.
yeah, an old woman, she was either or like a prostitute because she was out during the middle of the day. And it was this thing of like to really diminish her. And like that wasn't the case. But it's just like our perspective of what it should have been, right? We're looking at it like with our eyes, like I mean, our like Western eyes,
Yeah.
American eyes, and it's like because I guess y'all, I hate to say it, was like y'all needed to be diminished because it has to perpetuate the cycle of, you know,
Yeah.
men being the mouthpiece kind of thing.
Exactly. So I see, as you said, Roy, I don't see Jesus uh interacting with the woman we get to see described in the scriptures, right?
Mhm,
The way I saw so many men in the ICOC believing that they had the right to just because
mhm.
they're men, and how convenient it is to be a man in a fundamentalist um, system like this one. And then, I mean, I was told once that that I was too fat to be a missionary, that I needed to lose weight.
You were too
Um,
fat to be a missionary?
yeah, and I was just 21. I mean, even if I was fat, I was not. But even if
Yeah.
that was true, like it was a man who sent the message to me because he wouldn't say it to me to my face. But then it was the man, the leader of that group I was taking part in, who told me this.
Yeah.
Like they thought they had the right to judge the size of my body
Hmm.
and say she needs to hear this. She cannot be a missionary being fat. Um, I remember once I, I it was ridiculous. This person who posted something on his social media, who was at the moment was considered an enemy of the ICOC there in Mexico, posted something really funny, and I just put like, right? Because it
Hmm.
was really funny, something he posted. And that the result of that interaction was um one of the leaders in Mexico City asking us, my husband and I, for a video call. He was in Mexico, here, us in Boston. And he dedicated time to rebuke my husband for what I did because I didn't even deserve to being rebuked by what I did. It was like, how would you allow your wife to do something like this? Don't you know how much harm this person is doing to the ICOC in Mexico? He went there to call and he would not go directly to me.
Yeah, we
And
can't, yeah, like men can't talk to women.
so that's why he needed my husband
Yeah.
there.
Hmm. There's a big put like I was watching, there's a couple of guys that are high up in contemporary Christian culture, and they were sitting there with their wives, and they were talking about how they don't get on elevators alone with a woman. They don't talk to a woman. If there's an issue they're having, they tell their wife, and the wife will talk to them. Um, it's very much a separate thing. But then I think it's like that's in our culture. It's crazy that you didn't deserve a talking to, the husband did.
Exactly. I have a friend who recently they were told they were no longer members of their specific branch,
Hmm.
and they were they were told about that through a text message. And that text message was, I mean, that is already awful, right?
Hmm.
But they were informed of that through a text message. And that text message was directed to the husband. And in that text message was like, yes, just so you know, from now on, you are no longer members. You and your wife are no longer members of this,
Hmm.
Like my friend didn't even deserve her own text message to let her know that she was no longer a member. And this was like at the end of last year, I think. So that shows so much about what the cult thinks and feels and believes about women. So
Man.
eventually the day became like in the middle of the pandemic, the day for talking about a role. Remember what I just read? One of the warnings or,
Hmm.
rebukings was Tania has objected to the church's view of biblical roles in a marriage. I love that. She has expressed these views and presently holds to them. We had a task force formed to finally talk about the role of women in the church in the Boston ICOC.
Who was leading the task force?
Men,
I'm sorry, dude.
the lead evangelist,
Really?
the elder, the teacher,
Damn.
and they invited, I know, uh, they invited, they said we're gonna make sure like representation would be from all, ages and representation from women. I asked to be part of that task force.
Mm-hmm.
And I was told no, because they already had someone who speaks Spanish, a white woman who speaks Spanish, who leads a Spanish speaking region, right? But I was like, is that was enough for representation?
Hmm.
But mostly I was not qualified because that was a topic too close to my heart. I get too emotional and I will not, I would need to be more tempered or work in myself before participating in that. And so the result of that task force, and supposedly we were all going to participate in the end and read a number of books. We ended up just reading this specific that eventually became a book, like a document from the teachers of the entire ICOC that
Hmm.
is even published. They even published it. We ended up going around that, and the final result, and the public uh yeah, like decision was okay. We studied, we prayed, we included everyone, young people, we included people like all of the elders and their wives, the evangelists and their wives, and some singles, some campus, etc. And the final decision is the Boston ICOC. It's, if we need to, use a word, it's complementarian.
Oh
Complementarian,
yeah. Hmm. Hmm.
which is in the end the result or the conclusion the entire ICOC ended up.
So they took the stand. They said they're the complementarian approach to
Yes.
marriage. Yeah,
Yes.
that's a yeah, that's a. Mhm. I've heard that word a lot. I've heard it get thrown around.
So
Mhm.
I don't know, from what I can remember, the entire ICOC declared that like we are complementarians,
Mhm.
right? Not egalitarians at all, like no. And the hardest part, I mean, I think it's valid that a congregation ended up saying, hey, we worked, we discussed, we
Mhm.
prayed, we consulted, and we decided to follow, this approach of complementarianism. But the the worry that the thing that worried me the most was they dare to say, and this is God's will. That's
Mhm.
the biggest problem.
Yeah, because it's not really ever, a lot of it comes from the fact I've done a little bit of research
Okay.
into this, and
Mhm.
I know that some of it comes from the fact that like Eve was a part of Adam, and they take that as that's one of the foundations. Um, and there's a guy, Dan McKellen,
Mhm.
who talks a lot. He has a podcast called Data Over Dogma,
Okay.
where he kind of dives deep into the Bible and stuff like that. But there's never really like, I don't know, like I've never seen really a God says it's this way. I think there's like Paul might say this could work, or Peter, but then in the same time, like I think about like how we're reading the Bible, it really like, what am I trying to say? Like I think about like First Timothy 3, where they talk
Mhm.
about how women should be silent in
Mm.
church and women should be modest in dress. And so I've researched a little bit into that specific passage where like that's not necessarily what they were saying per se, because there's a lot of things that were happening in that specific church with regards to like there was a, I think I heard there was like a cult of women, and they would be like very loud and very
Mm.
brazen and be like interrupting the church. And so
Mhm.
Paul, I think, is addressing those specific, that specific group of women, not all women
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
And then when in modesty, I think what I was reading and what I found was that it was about people were coming to church being very audacious in their dress, like how they were dressing. They were like flaunting their wealth. And it's kind of like he was saying church isn't the place for that.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
like we take something at its base value, like literally, and we're missing the entire point, is what I'm kind of getting at.
Yeah.
And it's damaging because the Bible was never meant to be read literally,
Yeah.
in my opinion. And so like I haven't found a scripture where God says you're supposed to be in the kitchen, essentially, right?
Exactly. Or you're supposed to not
Yeah.
be able to lead because
Yeah.
that's the role of the man. And if there's a good man able, then he should do it, no matter if you're more talented or you're gifted by God.
I know. I just try to tell my wife she can't lead and see what happens. That's what I have to say for them, or like try to have a man come up to me and say what my wife did when my wife's standing there and watch what she's saying.
Exactly.
It's not okay. Like,
Exactly. And
yeah.
and and at the end, it's like, I feel like even a cult has the right to say we are complementarians, but was
Hmm.
not anyone's right is to say, and this is God's will. This is
Hmm.
what God wants, because that's what a cult does. It is more
Yeah. Hmm.
honest, and we even asked like, hey, can we just like, oh, and guess what? Who presented our results, like our conclusions to the entire Boston ICUC?
Hmm.
A man,
Yep.
a man.
Yeah.
Obviously, he had like women around, because the boys, we gave space. No, it was a man, an old white guy
Hmm.
telling us what our place is supposed to be according to God's will, and that is
Hmm.
being complementarian. And
Yep.
even the softest of complementarianism, Roy, it's abusive and violent with
Mhm.
women in the end. um it
Yeah.
allows men to believe they have a right to women's bodies. It
Hmm.
allows for men to believe that they know better and that they should be leading, no matter uh, if they don't have talent or the gifts or the preparation for that. And it perpetuates um, hate, misogynism, sexism,
Hmm.
right? And it was really sad. I think after that situation, I felt like, whew, so probably depressed. Like really, I really believed that that was the time for a real conversation. I mean, I'm in Boston. These
Yeah.
are people who are open to study. These are people who are educated. These are people who, for sure, want to get better at what they're doing.
Hmm.
And these people are gonna listen. These are not, these other guys from Mexico who wouldn't even dare to talk to me directly.
Yeah. Hmm.
And the result was being called um, how this event demonstrated my lack of wisdom, how I didn't have self-control, how I was not self-aware,
Hmm.
how I would not conduct appropriate in the staff. So it was devastating, to be honest. And I got to hear, like, supposedly one of those meetings we had, um the the wife of the lead evangelist sent us an email to all the staff women and told us, well, our next reunion about this topic will be just the time for everyone who would like to do it to express how their experience as a woman has been in this church. I wrote her back, are you serious about this?
Hmm.
Like, are you for real? You really
Hmm.
want to hear, you really want me to speak about my experience. Like, is it really going to be a safe place? Yes, we are going to instruct all the region leaders that they won't be allowed to speak. That was huge.
Wow.
That was huge. That was promising. I felt like, okay, great. So I took time to talk to members of my region because I I really thought this is my opportunity not to only bring my voice and my experience, because again, it is a privileged one. I was a region leader,
Yeah.
and I talked to a good number of the members of my region because I had to bring their voices to that meeting, right?
Hmm.
I talked to one sister who participated in the board for a number of years, and she told me about her frustration of she and another sister being way more educated and able, because that was part of their own jobs, to do this specific task at the board, but they were not allowed because it had to be the elder deciding. And she told me, Tania, I never felt more diminished, never in my job, never with my husband, but the board always, and this elder always treated us like, yeah, but yeah, yes, you know this, but he's the one deciding everything. Like someone who's not trained in these specific things we were working on. Anyways, several of my the women that I had in my ministry, I was ready to bring their voices. I spoke. I felt like, you know what, Roy? I felt like finally I'm meeting with all these evangelists, region leaders, and they won't be able to talk. Oh my God, that's pure gold.
Yeah.
And I'm going to speak. Uh, and they couldn't. I said something that was really disturbing for one of them, an elder and teacher,
Hmm.
and he spoke anyways. And nobody told him anything. And he was basically like, yeah, but anyways, Tanya, I think you and the wife of the region, the lead evangelist, and I, we should get together and put this straight, because you're wrong. And
Damn.
what you said, you're wrong. And I was like, is anyone going to tell him that he's not supposed to talk, let alone rebuke me in this specific moment that we finally have to say how it is to be a woman in the ICOC, this in Boston? And it was appalling for me that a good number of other region leaders took that time not to bring the voices of the sisters they led. They took that time just to say, well, um, I just want to say how much I appreciate, and this was like kind of the tone they used. I just want to say how much I appreciate all my brothers, since they are all amazing.
Mm.
And I've never in my life ever been treated with disrespectful. No one has ever taken advantage of me, and especially my husband. He's the most loving, uh, gentleman, amazing husband. And I was like, I can't believe this. Like, who cares? I mean, it is the minimum. Like, it's a region leader. He's supposed,
Yeah.
like, come on, you're here to bring other voices, the voices of the sisters who will never be brought here unless you bring them. And they dedicated some good number of them dedicated their time just to praise their husbands
Hmm.
instead of in saying very clear, I have never ever been treated with disrespect anytime. And I was like, yes, because this is one of the groups, the most privileged groups ever. Some of them, some of these women has never ever worked in anything, and men, in
Hmm.
anything else but the ministry. Right away from college, they became family with the main leaders, or
Hmm.
direct family because nepotism is real. Their
Yeah, so
daughters or sons.
they were in the winner's circle from the start. So of course
Yeah.
they never had a
I
bad
mean,
experience.
it
Yeah.
wouldn't have, it would, if we would have a royalty, some of them were royalty, like the
Hmm.
daughters and or sons from prominent leaders around the United States, around the world, in the ACOC. So it was very disturbing. I remember one guy saying, one evangelist saying, well, if a woman ever preached to me or teach me, my conscience will be very affected.
God.
So all of this was okay for them, and obviously our place was like, um, you know, um, perfect help, supportive, and no need for a change. I'd say at the beginning, we ended up with 16 new things to teach in each region. Fortunately, it never saw the light, but it was ridiculous. Like, who could participate? For how long? Would it need to be a man next to a woman that in front of the church for sharing? What is sharing? What is preaching? What is so? And fortunately, somehow they stopped that, but we already had like 16 new rules after that task force. 60 new rules approximately to
Mhm.
establish in all the regions in Boston. So it was terrible. It was pretty awful. And yeah, uh it's very convenient for men. It's so hurtful for women, at least from my experience and the women around
Mhm.
me, who 90%, at least 90% of the women I used to work for suffer some form of sexual abuse in their lives, at least once.
Mhm.
Um, and just, and then in this cult, perpetuate this, um, you need to submit, you need to pray, you're going to change your spouse by prayer by your example. A good number of women around me were at some point of their lives advised to stay in abusive relationships.
Mhm.
A good number of them suffer even from marital rape because they are supposed to be available for their partners anytime because that's what what God would want them to do.
Mhm.
And many, many other things like yeah, men would dare to say to women all kinds of things that would never dare to say to another man. And definitely had to do also, I was saying at the beginning, how being women of color and um, how that affected my even my professional life, to say it in to use
Hmm.
a word, in the ministry. I definitely was led to feel sometimes unseen, unheard, even though they would always say things like your voice is so important, your point of view is so important. Um, just it was so uncomfortable for them that I dared to ask. I remember one of the lead evangelist, not the lead evangelist, but another evangelist telling me, basically asking me, it was not a question, but asking me, who do you think you are to ask for accountability? I
Yes.
mean, and I am already a 40 something year old woman. I'm a
Hmm.
seasoned minister. I cannot imagine him daring to say that to the wife of the lead evangelist or any other white
Yeah.
leader, men or women. But he dared to say that to me. Another one dared to say to me, you're sinful and blasphemous for saying the church is sexist and homophobic. I cannot imagine him saying that to any other white minister, men or women, but uh, they felt they could do it, and they actually did it to me. Uh, when I asked for, after specifically after this task force with the role of women, I asked for a sabbatical. Like, I really need to
Yeah, I
rest.
remember you talking
Right?
about that. Hmm.
That same situation, like it really felt, and I told them, it really felt like this is something is reserved for white men. And and then I was told, no, no, but we also offer this to white women. It was, oh, thank you for making it more specific. This is not for women of color ever. And specifically at this moment, not for me.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, it has layers, right? This
It does.
how do you say that? Like, there's layers to our experiences.
Yeah, there's layers to every problem. Every problem is not just a clear cut one thing. There's a lot of reasons why something's happening,
Yeah.
you
So
know.
you would have like on the top, intersectionality. That was the word I was
Mhm.
looking for.
Oh, wow.
So in
Nice.
this intersectionality, like the top is, for example, this white old man who instructed the whole Boston church what our role would be, because not only because of the power he had as a teacher, elder, but he's also a millionaire. This is real.
Mm-hmm.
He's all these things. So this is a perfect example of who's at the top, and then intersection over intersection, right? So there at the top is this guy with power and money. Oh, heart. And then and then you go down and
Yeah.
down and down. And who's at the bottom? Who is at the bottom? A woman, probably disabled, probably um not but black,
Mm-hmm.
or fat, uneducated,
Mm-hmm.
like all these layers would affect, like she would be the one feeling all the experiences. And these, if we benefit this woman, this theoretical woman that obviously exists,
Mm-hmm.
disabled, of color, poor, uneducated, uh, not the prevalent appreciate presentation of her body. Oh, queer, another
Yeah.
layer. But if we benefit this woman, if we in that conversation we had when the men were not supposed to talk, if we bring the experience of this sister, everyone on the structure will benefit because that's where we're supposed to work. That's where we're supposed to give space and better, opportunities, our eyes, our hearts, everyone. But
Hmm.
it is the other side. We hear this guy who will tell the rest of us who had the least, the smallest perspective because has the biggest privilege. It will just stay like that. And us, the rest, will continue suffering. So that lack of intersectionality, consideration, and understanding, it's again the vision and interpretation of the colonizer
Hmm.
who would tell the rest how to live because he knows best, but his vision is this little and will not benefit this entire body, right? So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing all this.
Mm.
I think
I
the
hope it
most
makes some
important,
sense.
it does make sense. It does make a lot of sense to see it that way.
Mm,
Um, I think there's this guy, Richard Rohr, and he says
mm,
the main theme of the Bible is about the misuse of power
mm,
and the damage of that, and it's always Jesus was always critiquing those in power and their use of power over the powerless,
mm,
and how we just don't we've forgotten that for some reason.
mm.
And I liked the way that you were showing the layers of that, made it very clear. And it's but I think the most powerful thing about what you're saying, I think why it's so great what you're talking is you're showing that it was still going on, because a lot of us are in this mindset of this was what it was then,
Mm-mm.
it's not anymore. And so I thank you for keep the light shining on this, because it needs to happen, you know.
Ah, no, thank you for the opportunity. And I think it is also, I don't know if it feels like that. Hopefully it feels like that. Just having a little window of what
Mhm.
actually happens, like in the room when it
Yeah.
happens, right? Like the things, the things that some evangelists think and say about the
Yeah.
members.
Hmm.
I wish like there could be, recordings
Hmm.
of what it said of the yeah, like it and how deep they believed it, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And how hard it would be from that space of power to consciously say this has to be different
Hmm.
because it will touch not only your privilege but everything you're supposedly to give your life to. And many of these leaders, like some of them are really old, like they're really close to their retirement. No one
Hmm.
is going to risk that, right? Like
Yeah.
even when they say, yeah, and all of them secretly, that was something very unnerving, but I had a good number of secret admirers between the region leaders, women. Some of them will text me after a meeting and say, "Oh, I'm so glad you said that, Tanya. I think the same."
Mm.
And it was like, why, why you stay quiet? Why do you text me this?
Hmm.
Right? Like they will never dare to say that out loud in front of the others because everyone knows how that goes, even in that group, right? Like once you become a threat, it doesn't matter who you are or who do you think you are.
Yeah.
Anyways, just this little window of, yes, 2023. That was the year of my
Mhm.
latest interactions, not so long ago. Yes, the people in charge of singles believe singles don't know and they need to be controlled.
Yeah.
Yes, 2023, and the leadership believes women's role should be, you know, not to lead, not to say no, not to have a voice, and many other things. Like they still believe it's correct, fair, even biblical to hit their children, and they
Mm.
still teach that in more in shady ways, because if one of your kids say, if one of their kids tells me at school what is happening to them, you know what happens.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
um, so I think it's good to remember that, because no matter how hard the love bombing will be at the beginning, uh, everyone will, if you dare to be honest, you will see and recognize, yeah, that's still there, very much alive.
Yep. Well, I hope that people can listen to this with open hearts instead of trying to listen to it in a way to prove no, it's not that way. That the people listening can get out of their way
Mm,
and truly hear it, because I think it's important for us to be listening a lot more to stuff like this and to people like you know, and not trying to diminish or say how you've got it wrong. Um,
mm,
because people said that to me. I guess I hated when people said that to me about the church, and I'm coming from a position that of being a white man in the church, but I hated that. People saying that no, because you're upset, you saw it wrong. That wasn't how it was supposed to be. And
mm,
so I hope that people can listen. So,
mhm.
well, yeah, man, that's all. Thank you so much for doing this again and sharing this. It's powerful. It is.
Thank you, Roy.
So, and yeah, thank you guys, all of y'all, for listening, and your continued support for the podcast. If you remember the ICOC or the ICC and would like to share your story, please hit me up on Clemens with a Z at gmail.com, or direct message me at the Clemens with a Z Instagram page. So, yeah, until next time, guys,
Thank you
peace.
so much. Bye.